up? What up? What up?
And we're back. Back
What
here
up?
in San Diego, California, Indianapolis, Indiana, and New York, New York. I'm your host, Rico. This is my buddy Elvis. And of course, Mike, no last name, in New York.
Hello, Scorpion Percussion. Scorpion Percussion.
Shout out Scorpion Percussion. Shout out. If you're going to Las Vegas this weekend and you happen to be at the Las Vegas Drum Show, come check out the Scorpion Percussion booth. I will be there. Scorpioning. Check us out. Lots of cool stuff. Anyways, so how were you guys' weekends?
Considering it's Thursday, it was the weekend about 5 days ago or 4 days ago. My week so far has been shitty, but that's besides the fact. How about you, Chris? Let's keep it on a positive note.
I was in San Diego, playing Marine. It was good. Saw Rick.
How was yours,
and-
Rick?
It was pretty fun. Elvis came over. He did some DJing, and we spun. And then went to go see Lee Burridge, big DJ over at Shout Out Music is for Lovers at the Wicked West here in San Diego. That was fun on Saturday. And then I chilled. Got a bunch of shit done, but relaxed. Been a busy week since then. Chilling, getting ready for the Vegas Drum Show. Doing the shows Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Now I'm on the Mitch Dodge Show on Wednesdays at 4 and Tuesdays at 4 for live DJ mixing. It's kind of fun, but it's exhausting. My butt hurts from doing the DJ bounce.
Okay, we're not. I got so
Is that
many
how you
jokes
got
I
on
could
these?
go.
Is that how you get on these shows? Little cross country skiing? You doing cross country skiing?
No, exactly. No, none of that casting couch stuff. It's just from bouncing behind the
You
DJ
sure?
booth. Yeah, you just bounce. You know, you're like, you grab the DJ booth. You're like, yeah, what up, what up?
Rick, when you go to Vegas, you got to tell me like if it's really as dead as everybody says, because
It was pretty dead when we were there for this. It wasn't dead, but it was just like it was dead in the shop. Like nobody was spending money. It was just a bunch of people on the street wasted with their families.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Check out the Sphere. Heard it's dope.
Yeah, it was cool. It's pretty big. It's we didn't do the tour. We like walked by it and checked it out, and then we went to this really cool museum. I forgot what it was called. I think you can probably look it up, but it's like a immersive museum. And so like all those rooms, like remember I took you guys in New York to the Mercer Labs? It was similar.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got the idea. Doug and Brian, both the members of Core were out there, and Brian, the lead singer, he's very spiritual. Was like, yeah, let's go check this out. So that was pretty
You
cool.
said it was Larry Flint's Presents Hustler Museum. I thought that's what you went to.
I mean, I did that later, Chris, in that conversation when it says between me and you usually means I don't. Yeah, I mean that's all.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Not bad. And I'm
Anyways, last week
frozen.
we had broken with the tradition that we started because we were in a rush. So this week we're going to go back to our daily Rico's weekly tarot reading from the Britney
God,
Spears
here we
tarot
go.
deck. Guys, this is what everyone's always been waiting for. And
You
so
never voted on this. You just decided to do this. Like,
Chris was
and I had
I
no
stopped
input.
doing it, and Chris is like, we didn't do the tarot thing. So first we got to cleanse the deck,
Chris,
little
why would you
energy.
make that comment?
Then I'm going to shuffle.
I was waiting for it.
Ricardo. Oh, God. Here we go. Okay. Wake me up when this is over.
I know, right?
All right, and then we're gonna pull the card. We're gonna pull the card. All right, guys, ready? I'm gonna
Trailblazer.
show you guys the card first.
Oh.
It is. I don't know what it is.
It's a robot jacket.
It's
Looks
Michael
a jacket. I'm
Jackson
gonna
jacket.
read it. It is the Femme Fatale. I don't know if that's a good reading. Let's look up the book. What that means. Give me 1 sec, guys.
You take all the time you want. If you
The
want to walk
femme
in another
fatale,
room,
huh? That's Ricardo's spirit animal, I think.
Let's see what it says.
says,
guys. So.
Diva bitch. That's
Britney's
Ricardo.
seventh album, Femme Fatale, was made for the clubs. She experimented with EDM, how interesting, and kept the party going all night long. Femme Fatale was the more upbeat sonic sister of Blackout.
I thought that was
With
cocaine.
with more glitter and flashing lights. The femme fatale's energy is contagious. She encourages
It's
you
like cocaine.
to be your most fun and fabulous self and shake off your worries and go out dancing. Wow.
Also cocaine. Also cocaine. Cocaine
let
and
me
femme
ask you a
fatale.
Grab the champagne, put on your leather jacket, and head out for the night. You never know what magic is waiting for you on the dance floor, guys. Ready? That's the femme fatale. That's
let me
this
ask you a
week's
question.
Rico's tarot reading from the Britney Spears tarot deck. This week's card is femme fatale energy, guys. Ready? Once again, femme fatale is contagious and encourages you to be your most fun and fabulous self. Shake off your worries and dance into the night, guys. Straight up.
Let me ask you a question. These readings, are they supposed to be a daily reading, a weekly reading, a monthly reading?
They can happen. You can, so there's a process. You cleanse the deck, you reshuffle it, and you can, like, you have to just, have some intention. There's ways that you can pull cards. Like there's like 3 and 7 things, and so you can pull 3, which would be like past, present, and future. You can pull 1, which basically is like, for the show, we're just like, what's the weekly intention? So like the weekly theme.
Intentions. Okay.
Yeah, for us
Gotcha.
would be like
Okay.
the femme fatale. So like, what I would, if you want me to translate that, which is going to be part of the show, I would suggest that it means that, like, if you're, have been worrying a lot about things and you feel a little bit guilty about like taking care of yourself, kind of letting loose even mentally, or spiritually, a lot of us disconnecting, this would be a sign to say like, hey, go ahead. Like maybe you kind of need a night off, right? And like, don't be afraid of any opportunities that may provide that for you. Embrace those and get into that mood. It's kind of what your body needs. Listen to it, you shake it off, and then you'll be better off for it. And then next week we'll see what's going on.
Oh, what? We're over?
Yeah. That was the weekly Rico's weekly tarot, Britney Spears weekly tarot card reading. The tarot card this week was femme fatale. That means shake off your worries and dance into the night.
Say it one more fucking time for me, please. I need to hear it again.
Well, nobody else is saying anything. I like this. Is fun as shit for me.
Oh, God.
Anyways, guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of Almost Patriots, episode 25. This week we got a bunch of topics for you. Kicking it off with a little bit talking about Snow White and some of these Disney remakes. A little bit about some of the Tesla stuff that's been going on. Kind of hard to avoid that. Chris is going to talk a little bit about leadership. I'm going to chat a little bit about sort of the differences between community and audience. I think it's going to be an interesting perspective. It'll help with anyone. And then all of us are going to head out to the Indy 500 this year, like we did last year. Chris got us some snake pit tickets, so we can talk a little bit about who we're going to see at the snake pit and a little bit about the race and our experience last year. Let you guys know how that went. So starting off the show, Mike has been on it with this entertainment, and so he wanted to talk a little bit about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I guess, or the Friendly Ghost. How was did any of us see this movie?
No.
I refused to see it. There was too much bad publicity from it. So, realistically, the reason why I bring this topic is last week we talked about the lack of creativity. We were talking about Hollywood and the problem with the remakes, etc. This new Snow White, based on everything that I've seen, all the reports, everything, it's a reimagined Snow White. They take the premise and then they basically change it to, in my opinion, manipulate and brainwash people from the original version. The original version was supposed to be happy, fun. It was a little kids like movie. Now this one, all of a sudden, it is all thrown into your face. There's so many controversies going on with it. But the real reason why I bring this up was because its main actress, Rachel Ziegler, or whatever her name is. She's a 23-year-old actress. She's got an amazing voice. I don't want to take that away from her. But she got so political. And even Disney turned around and asked her to basically stop with her political statements. And this girl just keeps going. It got to a point where this movie right now is on pace to be a huge box office bomb. It did not turn around and perform, but it got so bad. And my issue with this is you're an employee of a company. There were thousands of people that worked on this movie. There's hundreds of millions of dollars thrown into this movie. At a certain point, you have to sit there. I get it. If you're political and you want to be political, you have to understand there's consequences to the things that you say. And this girl is doubling down and tripling down now. At one point, she made a comment where she said, basically, I hope bad comes on to all Trump supporters. I hope, like, she talks about the war going on right now. And it's gotten to a point where it's like, you're the star of this movie. Do you not want to see the success of this movie happen? Are you really trying to alienate?
Weren't you saying that Gal Gadot too decided or asked to be removed from like all of the marketing too, just with her or something like that?
I don't know about her being removed, but what happened was Disney decided to stop doing marketing with them together. If you realize so at the beginning of the marketing of the movie, they started doing like press conference together. All of a sudden, this young female actress started to turn around and be very outspoken. And both of the major stars, Gal Gadot and this woman, Rachel, turned around and they clashed because they were on the opposite ends of the war that's going on. And all of a sudden, there was so much controversy. It was out there. So what ended up happening is they have hundreds of millions of dollars, and they basically didn't do a marketing campaign for the movie. They didn't do promotions.
What's this is like a trend with all of these sort of remakes. Has there been any of these remakes? Have any of them been a success? Live action remakes?
I thought the Aladdin one did well, right?
Aladdin did okay, but the one that was supposedly not really good. No, the one that was really didn't do good at the box office was, I think it was Lion King, the remake. But what happened was Lion King actually became very profitable because over time, a lot more people watched it. So it's initial. I think they ended up making like $750 or $800 million. The problem with this movie, though, is the Lion King had controversy, but it wasn't like this. Lion King's controversy was just over the storyline and basically people being tired of the remake. This one actually has.
They didn't want the lion to be the king. They want someone else to be the king.
Yeah, Mufasa. But no,
that's racist.
No, Mufasa is a character in the movie. Get your shit together, bro. But anyways,
Chris and I haven't seen the musical yet.
Yeah. So, anyways, the problem with this movie is there's too much controversy with the main two actresses. One actress is so defiant in her opinions and what she feels that it's basically torpedoing a movie that a movie studio.
So you think the comments that this young lady made affected the sales, or you think people are just not interested in seeing Snow? I feel like.
So I'll give you.
I feel like David Lynch should make like the Snow White movie. It should be like creepy and weird and like, who are these seven dwarves anyways?
I'll explain why I feel so. It's a combination of things. So one, it's
or like Quentin Tarantino. The seven dwarves just fuck each other.
Well, the dwarfs, they didn't use actors or
they all wear little black guys.
They used CGI. So that was the first fault. They used CGI. So they didn't. The second thing is she started commenting about the storyline of Snow White and basically how Snow White was being stalked by a guy and love, and it's not about that anymore. It's about empowering, like, Snow White, etc.
So do what?
So in her rant, she basically slams the whole storyline of like Princess, the Sleeping Beauty sort of thing, where it's like you come find the damsel, and it's like, I'm not a damsel, I shouldn't need to be rescued or whatever it is. It's like.
Yeah, so
she's hating on the movie that she stars in. It was kind of stupid.
But the whole
I feel like this is the whole like kneeling with the anthem. It's like you're lucky enough to be paid to be a professional athlete in a country, and then you're like, nah, I don't want to do that. It's kind of like, what?
Yeah, but what's wrong with you? So let me ask you, Chris, if you go into the office, right, and you're very outspoken about certain beliefs that everybody and your company tells you to stop doing those things, do you I'm going to keep going and I'm going to be even louder now, or do you take it under advisement and be like, okay, maybe I understand, I represent this company, they're investing in me, okay, maybe I should be a little bit smarter with the statements I'm saying, maybe I realize obviously the statements you're saying are not defamatory or like certain things, like you're not running around being racist, etc. Do you turn around and you're like, okay, let me reevaluate this. If my company's talking to me about something, okay, maybe the statements I'm making, maybe I tone them down, or maybe I just rethink them. And if they're really that important to me, maybe I just leave.
Well, I feel like I mean the director had to fly out to like ask her to like tone it down. I mean,
Oh,
you wouldn't
really?
have- yeah, the director
How
flew
old
out
is
to
this young lady?
she's 20.
Yeah, she's 20.
Yeah, the director flew out to London to like try to like, hey, like can you tone it down a little bit? And a bunch of people came out and like slammed the director for going down and trying to like curb what she was saying. But she basically came out before the movie came out and just slammed the whole plot line, just slammed the whole storyline, and basically saying that it was like anti-feminist or whatever. And then
I
it's
mean,
like,
like,
well, I mean, you're
so like
what the fuck are
here's
you
the
doing?
thing is like, right. I mean, like, in this, I totally don't know anything about the movie or her opinion. But like I think that if you're judging these types of things, one thing you have to consider is the integrity of the different types of protests, right? If she has her beliefs and she goes out and like says, "Hey, look, this is how I feel about empowerment or whatever." I don't feel like this kind of imagery or storylines are appropriate. That's my general opinion, right? And that's a way to like mark down some integrity. But when you participate in something and you profit from it like tremendously, and it gives you a platform, and then you use that platform that thing gave you to bitch about how that thing isn't any good or whatever, then the amount of integrity that your message has gone down quite a bit, or it should for educated viewers. So like one thing is like if this young lady was like, hey, I'm the hottest star ever, they've asked me to do a bunch of movies and I turned down Snow White because I don't like the princess role, kudos, girl. You
Yeah,
know, like,
exactly.
yeah, but you're like, hey, I got paid millions and I got a platform because nobody knew who the F I was before this. And I'm going to use that to, say that everything that got me where it is sucks. And that's just the integrity of that message kind of goes out the door.
Yeah. A
No,
lot of
I
people were
agree.
just talking like what he was like, what Mike was
I'm
saying
just
about all the other people that were, participated in making the movie that are, losing out because the movie's not going to make any money. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
like
So you got the directors, you got producers, people that are
editors,
attachers,
There's
grips,
editors.
thousands of people.
the
Yeah.
homeboys
Yeah,
holding the cameras and shit, and like, putting up the production designers, production builders.
she made her 3 million. She already got paid. The movie's already made. All these other people's livelihoods are still. There's back end deals on how much money they make, and some people get paid money out on that. There's so many
Hear
moving
me out.
parts.
Hear me out. So when people do this, when celebrities are like overnight celebrities use their platform to get rich and then trash the system, right? I think we should call it the Haktua. Because it's like the Haktua girl just like made that Bitcoin and stole $15 million and disappeared. And so like when somebody does that, I feel like it's like the Haktua. You know what I mean? Like she just
Yeah.
Haktua.
Yeah. And the worst part for me about it is she just keeps doubling down. She just keeps going. Like she's like, okay, no, I'm the star. I'm gonna say what I want. I'm gonna act the way I want. This is what I'm going to do. Gal Gadot is Gadot, however you say her last
Gal
name.
Gadot.
Godot, whatever. She's hot. But anyways, the thing that I like about her is she had a great statement. I believe she said it, but she was like, "We're supposed to be promoting this movie. We're supposed to be like
Yeah,
trying
lifting
to
it
make
up.
the
Yeah.
studio like money. They hired
I
us.
hope
We
nobody
have
ever
a
hires her again after that.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's put your money where your mouth is, and I think we'll see. What's going to
Yeah,
happen with
you know
her.
my favorite fan theory for Snow White. Lord Farquaad from Shrek.
from Shrek. Yeah,
Yeah, the fan theory was that Lord Farquaad is the sire of Snow White and Grumpy, the Grumpy dwarf.
Oh,
And
that's,
so
Oh.
that's how Lord Farquaad got the mirror, the
uh,
mirror on the wall, is because he's Snow White's child
that's
of
weird.
Snow White and Grumpy and the Grumpy dwarf. I was like, oh my
Hey.
god, it's so perfect.
it's
It's an
Disney. You
interesting
never
theory.
know.
Yeah.
No.
What's going on with the Tesla trucks, guys? You see all this stuff going on with these protests. I don't know. Really, I was been seeing it come up in the news, but it looks
Is out of
like
control.
so. I mean, why is it always like property destruction? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, why is it? It's never like, hey, I mean, like the laying in the road thing. I thought was disruptive, but like when you're gonna do like, your protests and you're doing them and you're vandalizing stuff and like, I really don't see how that message loses its integrity as well.
Yeah. Well, this is something that befuddles me. I can't understand how so many people are keying, blowing up, like throwing what is the cocktails? What type of cocktails is it called?
Molotov
Margaritas.
Molotov cocktail.
I think
Molotov
margaritas.
cocktails. I can't stand
Margarita.
how people are just destroying all these cars. Well, first of all, there are like just to let people know, there's an individual that goes to a dealership and buys that car. Elon Musk doesn't own that car after he sells it to someone. Okay, so
The funny thing is,
so
liberals own all the Teslas.
that's my point. Exactly. You hit it right in the head. It was supposed to be Tesla's huge thing is its climate change, helping keep or saving the environment by going EV. And everybody knows this. It's heavily electric vehicles are heavily purchased by liberals. They're fucking keying and destroying cars from their own party. The best one I saw was a person put a SWAT sticker, used a key to put a SWAT sticker on the side of a Tesla in Brooklyn, New York, when the individual in the car was Jewish and a huge, I think he said he was a Democratic donor. It was like, it
I mean,
was like you
that's
can't
ridiculous.
even make these stories up. But
But
the reason why I bring it up though is I want to hear your guys' thought. Would you ever go out and destroy property just because you didn't like that person or you didn't like that party? Because I would never do it.
That's why this victim mentality is so powerful and so problematic because essentially, when you have all this emotional angst built into this, political landscape, if people don't listen to what you have to say, then your only option is to get louder. I mean, there is because like your arguments fall apart as soon as you throw a little logic in there.
Hmm.
And so rather than, continue to have sort of back and forths, maybe arguing your point and like, sort of having these debates that, maybe you win sometimes because your arguments are solid. As soon as you poke a few holes in it, there's no ground to stand on. And so they just get more and more obnoxious. And, eventually when you tune somebody out who's like that long enough, their only recourse is violence. There's no other options. I mean,
Yeah.
they feel like they can't be heard. It's like a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. I mean, if you ignore them long enough, eventually they start like swinging, right? I mean, that's what 2-year-olds do. It's the same problem.
I just I just think it's so like ridiculous. Like we're really we've gotten to this point now. We don't get our way, so we protest, we destroy buildings, we set places on fires, we overtake police departments, courthouses, we go to the nation's capital, we do stupid shit. Now we go to Teslas, we're destroying Tesla dealerships. It's mind-boggling, and it's I don't see it getting better anytime soon. It's just getting worse and worse. And everybody keeps making the same argument. Oh, yeah, they have insurance. They have insurance. I could destroy this place. I can steal this. They have insurance. What the fuck does that statement mean? You do realize how insurance works. They just bill the individuals, that person that has that car or a region to make that money back, but more so targets. They have insurance. We rob them. Do you ever realize that in that same targets or in that same area, they just increase the prices of those items to make that money back?
Well, or
Like
they
this,
do they
this,
did in San Diego and they don't put the target in because it's too
yeah,
expensive. They back out of the deal. I mean, I think
yeah,
ultimately my biggest concern about this whole thing is when you had the same thing happen to me on a deployment where like the senior enlisted guy got fired and they brought in another guy that was junior, and so then now we didn't have anybody to fight our battles for us because there's nobody that on the same level. And so we have this sort of problem now where, and look, I like a lot of things that Trump and Elon are doing, don't get me wrong, but there has to be some voice that has some power and some, equivalence to kind of counteract so they don't like get out of control, right? I mean,
mhm.
everybody that's ever had power, eventually it will kind of get too far to in one direction. And like, look, I hope that there's enough liberals in Trump's, circle. Like, I mean, basically everybody in Trump circle is a liberal, including Trump, who used to be a Democrat until recently. I just would like to see a voice on the opposing side that can sort of debate on a level playing field. Because right now they're looking at AOC as their leadership,
Bernie Sanders too.
Well, no, Bernie's basically Bernie's out. AOC, and they're trying to get Gavin to like be a little bit more conservative, so he can like and it's just they have to find somebody that can come out that can go relatively toe to toe with JD and Trump, so that the Liberal Party doesn't just completely fall apart. Because no Liberal Party is bad, and no Conservative Party is bad. Both of those extremes are bad. So
yeah. Need a happy medium.
They got to figure it out. So they got to have a meeting and figure it out. Otherwise,
yeah, I mean, Cybertrucks, and Teslas definitely, or not. Back on track. Back on track. Yeah, I mean, we have a few years. I mean, my opinion on this is pretty easy. Whoever is kind of pulling the strings, is whatever you want to call that, like influencing or whatever, who's putting dollars. Wants to make the Tesla the new MAGA hat, and this is why it works out in their favor. And I'll tell you. So when you're wearing a MAGA hat, you could be a millionaire, and you could also be a redneck, right? But if you have $100,000 car, it's pretty obvious that you have some money, and like you may or may not be active, doing something, and it hurts financially, right? Bottom line. So I think that this target is just an evolved version of the MAGA hat. They've made it an easy target. And what the thing that it shows is that that they're willing to throw their own people under the bus, because like Mike said, most of these people who are I think are liberal people, and I'm not sure why they're attacking the Teslas. They're attacking Teslas because Elon Musk is cutting crap out of the budget. I mean, that sounds kind of ridiculous. Is it because he's involved? I mean, like, I think you have to understand that the president is the elected official, and then, he appoints pretty much everybody else in the whole fucking administration. So it's really up to him. It just so happens that, he's appointed somebody that has, some cool companies, whatever, but I don't care. I've never had a problem with Elon. I don't have a problem with any of this stuff. I think vandalism is stupid. I just think behaviorally this is just a new way of reframing the target and making it a little bit easier for people to get attention.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad, honestly.
Yeah, man. What about these creative bottlenecks and versus logistical or operational?
So I put the YouTube video up. This is Chris Williamson, and they were talking about the Wright brothers and how Wilbur was basically like bedridden. He had like a scholarship to like Harvard or Yale or Stanford or something, and then he got in a really bad hockey accident and was bedridden for like several months. And that's when he kind of decided that he wanted to fly, I guess. But not to go down that rabbit hole too far, but they basically they started having the conversation about how people like Wilbur Wright, people like Elon as an example, could you imagine living in a world where creativity is not where your bottleneck is? Where like you just have this sort of view where all your ideas can live and breathe and have meaning, and and have this like I don't know, visceral feeling that you can like perceive and like put forth, and that really your bottlenecks start running when you start running the bottlenecks. It's like operations and logistics, not creativity, right? Breathing these things into life is not the problem. It's actual like implementation. And I just thought that was fascinating to like kind of think about. I was curious how you guys feel about that idea about creative bottlenecks versus sort of like the tangible bottlenecks.
I mean, like being creative. I mean, basically, like I'll jump in here. And Mike is actually really creative as well. I think all of us are. But being in a creative field and doing production, like I think that a lot of the that personality that creatives have, right? Like we discussed a little bit on the show about how like we set goals a little differently, a little bit more with curiosity. And it's all centered around sort of this like field of safety, right? And so like, to be creative, you have to feel somewhat safe, right? And so like the best way to feel safe is to ensure that all of the things around you are sort of taken care of. or whether they're automated or they're simple. Like, somebody like Einstein used to wear the same suit, not because he was weird, just because like he could use the energy to do something else, right? It just created this safe environment. He always knew wherever he was going to look fine, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that operationally, from a creative standpoint, like I'm a fan of technology because I believe that it's going to help unlock more creativity and the ability for people to have time to get into the creative flow with things being automated that normally require tedious remembering and stuff, like paying your
down
everything from food, whatever, your meals, everything. And so all of a sudden you're kind of like, and I don't want to call it boredom, but there's a fine line between boredom and creativity, right? And so we talked a little bit about using drugs and psychedelics to sort of spark creativity, and like you can do it naturally, right? Whether you want to or not depends on where your curiosity is. But like if you're trying to break a barrier, right, where you're like really into doing multiple tasks and you have a system and you need to kind of break those those synapses that created that system in your head, then yes, psychedelics, meditation is, I'm going to tell you, is self-induced boredom. That's all it is. Meditation is, I mean, it's great. The breathing part is excellent. But when they're like, hey, sit in a corner, meditate for 5 hours, they're like, basically like, get fucking bored, traumatize yourself into kickstarting your imagination, and that will connect you with some of your spiritual goals. Guaranteed. But you can do it a million other ways.
Well, I'm going to take it in a different perspective. So having an idea, this is why entrepreneurs are very important. See, because the first problem is getting an idea, creating an idea, a business in general. Like Chris talks about the logistical and operational bottlenecks compared to the creative bottlenecks. Creativity, getting an idea, is one of the biggest and hardest problems. Or creating, a streamline or a program or something of that magnitude. Putting that into action is completely different. So you need to have the logistical ability to do that, the resources. And operationally, you have to, after you get the resources, you have to turn around and actually go out and do it. So I think personally, the reason why I look at a lot of entrepreneurs in this problem is the ones that really have that idea figure it out. They figure out the logistics. And it's not something like where you're going to have it on the first day. You could put something in plan. You can have a plan or a process, but it's always going to be tweaked. It's always going to be, changed, because what you thought from day one might not be the best route. So I think the logistical and operational like bottlenecks you figure out over time. I think getting that creativity, that idea to start something is always the hardest. Now, a lot of people have access to resources, and that's great. So if you have an idea for a business and you have the resources, let's say if it's the finances or the networks, that's great. But some people don't know how to do that operationally. They don't know how to put all the pieces together. So you have to get the right people in place to help you. And that's the problem. I find the creativity part of it is probably the second part that's the hardest. It's the operational nature of it. Logistically, I think it eventually gets in order. You figure it out. But the operational nature of that, putting the right people around you and making it continue to smoothly run, that's always the hardest.
Yeah, I like this. To speak on Mike's point of view, I think I like the idea of MVP, or what we call or what they call minimum viable product, right? And so like what that means is that like what you're doing is basically building not just a prototype, but like a working product, obviously, right? And it's the minimum. What solving just the fundamental problem, and then you iterate from there and build on it and create that problem. And I think that's a good way to create an intersection between the logistics and the creative, right? Is say like, okay, guys, like, we have these restraints here on the logistics side, and we have these restraints here on the creative side. So what's the minimum viable product? What's the center of that Venn diagram look like? What's the thing that we can take to market? Zero frills. And then from there we can iterate and add value. And that's always worked, I think, for me in these types of situations.
Yeah, the other thing that they mentioned at the very end of that conversation was about emotional bottlenecks and like psychological bottlenecks. And I think that's another aspect of like the creative side that, because I forget which book it was. One of the books that we read, last year or a couple of years ago, talked about how people with trauma have a much harder time getting into flow. And so that flow state where, a lot of people you sort of like disappear in the, 4 hours goes by and you have no idea, you don't remember what you're just doing because you're in like a creative flow.
So like, how we talked a little bit about the contrapositive, and for me, the contrapositive of ADHD is the inability to get into flow. Right. And so like, it's almost like the same, but it's almost the contrapositive of like ADHD is like you're focusing on the attention part, and with the other way, you're focusing on, hey, like I can't get into the actual like flow portion.
Yeah, so I feel like there's some barriers there with like, okay, so let's say, you have the creative juices, let's say, to come up with an idea, but then maybe you have an emotional bottleneck with the implementation because you're, too afraid to voice.
Scared.
Yeah, you voice your idea, breathe it into life, so to speak. Maybe you're being held back by like fear and other things. I just ultimately during the conversation, and I just wondered what that would feel like to be just so free that like the creative part was not your problem, right? Because like you said, operationally and logistically, I mean, I can find the right people to help. I mean, we can find the right stuff to do that. Those are problems that have answers. Like pretty simple answers. I mean, they might be complex answers, but they have answers. But the creative side, coming up with an idea and like breathing into life, that's a whole world that like there is no clear path to success there. That you just you come up with it or you don't. I mean, I'm
gonna cut you off for a second because I'm gonna apply. No, and the reason why I'm gonna cut you off is because I'm gonna apply it to the podcast. The creative idea with the podcast was to start the podcast, and our creativity comes in every week. How can we keep improving it? Okay, what are our topics? Okay, what do we want to do long term? How can we translate this podcast and certain other things? And we're always thinking about that. The logistics for this podcast is very simple. The logistics is getting us all here together at the same time, making sure our audio works and ideas work. Yeah. And then the operational aspect of it is, okay, we're here. The logistics are in place. It's just performing. And
especially you being in Guantanamo and being able to tune in every week.
I fucking hate you.
Shout out Scorpion Productions.
Shout out
Hannah. Shout out Hannah.
Speaking of that rude interruption by Mike, our next topic on the show is immature men have dark tetrad traits. Let me say that again. Immature men have dark tetrad traits. On Tuesdays.
So the topic was Jordan Peterson talking to some psychiatrist.
Jordan Peterson has a hot daughter.
And so what I found the most fascinating it wasn't immature men, which I mean obviously they are immature, but it was men that have short-term dating strategies or stick to like short-term dating strategies all have dark tetrad traits. So narcissistic tendencies, psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and what's the last one?
Psychopathy. CEO resume.
Yeah. You're throwing out a lot of big words. Can you please explain?
Yeah, all of these
big
are
words,
like,
Chris.
These are the people running our country, is what you're saying.
What is Tetris traits?
Tetris traits, the dark triad. That's what I said. So it's psychopathy, sociopathy, Machiavellianism, which is manipulation, and narcissism, right? And when he first started talking about that, I really
tetrad I think is 5 sides.
Well, it used to be called the dark triad, right? But now they've added narcissism to the dark tetrad.
So it's 4.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's a tetrad. So it doesn't sound as good.
So what I found fascinating about this is like when I started looking at it introspectively, I mean, I definitely have had some narcissistic tendencies, and Machiavellianism is like my middle name, or at least it used to be for a long time.
I think he was a little darker skinned than you.
Well, yeah, he was Italian, so of course.
Yeah.
But no, it's fascinating to kind of think about that a little bit. How we have a tendency to seek short-term relationships when you kind of have these sort of traits, and some of them are definitely like traumatic or trauma-induced. And I feel like, now that I'm 41 and I've sort of let go of most of my narcissistic tendencies, and I definitely try really hard not to be manipulative.
You hope.
Yeah, that I'm not really interested in short-term mating strategies anymore, right? I mean, it's not really something that, I mean, I used to, that was like the assumption, right? It was like you go out and, you know, try to hook up, right? That was kind of like that was a Tuesday. And I found it fascinating that there was a direct correlation with the conversation and my own like experience in my own life. And I wasn't sure how you guys felt about it, but yeah.
I'm not looking for a relationship, and I have none of these should apply to me because I'm not immature. I'm a grown ass man. No, I agree with you. I actually, no, I agree with you. Actually, I think like if you're looking for certain things, definitely. So, men don't grow up until, and this is real. This is as real as it gets. We don't grow up until we get older, because we have to go through life experiences to actually like look back and, you know, develop. And the problem with that is you are narcissistic. You are a manipulator at a certain point. You are extremely immature in so many different ways. The problem is, in order to grow, you have to look in the mirror and look at your actions and what you really want, and you have to change certain things about yourself. A lot of us don't do that, and we continue to keep those traits as we get older. We just fine-tune them and develop them in different ways, or we realize it and we work on it into a certain perspective.
Or those traits lead us into success, and you know, there's no what do you call it, incentive to change.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking from the dating perspective, like those traits as a younger individual. I think professionally, some of those traits are phenomenal because you need them to be successful. It's just knowing when to be able to use those traits, if they help you or hurt you, and it depends on what environments you use them in.
Well, I think true narcissism doesn't. I mean,
Right.
It's very difficult to have success over a long period of time. Short-term success, absolutely.
Well, they say almost 95% of CEOs or major company executives are all NPOs, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. They all have that.
I think my opinion on this, like I think psychologically or whatever behaviorally, kind of goes to this thing where there's a quote that I saw that said, you know, for every man to truly live, he must die. And I think this applies here. And so I think what happens, and this also correlates to men being sort of, you know, a little bit more, you know, more like men in their 40s. As I think that there, you know, as a man, you grow up a boy, and what a boy means is that you're a man with feminine qualities. Okay. And I think some of these feminine qualities, you know, could be interpreted as, you know, good or bad, but obviously necessary for survival because you have to please your mother, right, in order to survive. And I think that if men, you know, have a really good upbringing, you know, they become very sort of like, how do you call it, nostalgic about some of these things. And, you know, when you shed some of the things that don't work for you as a man, you do sort of like become a lot more in touch with the person that you are, and definitely more mature. And I think that part of that dying process has to do with sort of like losing those boyhood attachments to some of these behaviors that will still produce outcomes for you, but may not necessarily be a reflection of your character.
Good point.
I'll talk about leadership. Mitch was in the chat. Oh, what up, Mitch Dodge? Shout out, Mitch Dodge. I don't know if he's still in the chat.
I just thought the one point I wanted to make, I think, is that anybody that's sort of trying to figure themselves out, right? They get into their 30s or whatever, and they're trying to figure themselves out. If you're actively seeking short-term mating strategy as your like future
Donovan
objective,
in the chat said that he loves the topic short-term mating strategy.
yeah, I know, right? That might be a key indicator that you might have some stuff you need to work on. I mean, whatever it is, right? Obviously, if you're a psychopath, you're not gonna fucking really give a fuck, but. Yeah, just something to think about. If that's what you're if that's your objective, then there might be some stuff you need to work on.
Well, another thing too is I had like a homie come up to me sort of about a current relationship and a past relationship, and one of the things that like, you know, we talked about was that I'm learning myself that you sort of like attract the traits that you have, or that you know, you reflect sort of those things. And so like if you're you know, hooking up with people that have this dark tetrad in your partner, then there's a good chance that you probably suffer from the same qualities. And so like it's not necessarily like the victim mentality where like people are taking advantage of you. There's probably something there that's reflected. You're not catching it.
Truth.
What about leadership, Elvis?
Okay, so a couple years ago I started working on my own definition, and well, I had Webster's definition pulled up. Webster's definition is super boring. Basically, it's like demonstrating leadership. It's like so dumb. So my definition is a leader is invested in the personal and professional success of their individual subordinates, peers, their own leaders, and not in the results they produce. Leaders take charge for the sake of accomplishing the task or goal that will.
Can you read that with a little more gumption, buddy? Yeah. Read it like
gumption?
you mean it. Yeah, read it like you mean it.
Read it like you mean it, but more so pronunciate.
Leaders
and
take
pause.
charge for the sake
you can do a sexy
emphasize at the end of every sentence.
Leaders take charge.
Only two
take
sentences.
charge.
That's what it sounds like. What you're saying, you're like leaders take charge when they have five.
You trail off.
Of themselves and
Also, go Oregon.
Imagine Hannah was right in front of you right now, and you're reading the definition to her.
Shout out Hannah. If you're in the chat, Chris misses you. Shout out New York Hannah. If you watch the show,
shout out New York Tao Hannah.
We'll send you a Starlink and a DJ controller setup because we don't want to send it to Africa.
No, I'm not out of his fucking pocket, not mine.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what we'll do, to celebrate 100. Haha, that was a creative topic. Oh, my bad. Dono wanted to clarify that the creative bottlenecks topic was the one he appreciated, not the short-term mating strategy one. Shout out Donovan. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. My purpose, and I won't read the whole thing, but essentially it's like, I put at the end not being recognized for accomplishing the task at hand is kind of, I think, one of the most underrated values of being in leadership. Like your objective should be the personal and professional growth of the people and to accomplish a task. But I think too often we get lost in getting recognized for said accomplishment, and that's not the point. It's not the point of being a leader.
Great leaders are measured by their success, though. Bitch.
So that's the problem today, is that leaders are measured by their success, but it's a metric. It's incentivization. The incentivization structure is broken. I think leaders should be measured by the success of their subordinates, not their own individual success.
Yeah, but that's the whole point, though. If you're successfully training and taking an interest in your subordinates and they're successful, that's a measure of your success by leading them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But
your definition needs to be fucking tweaked to include success.
I didn't actually read the whole thing, but no, the recognition is the problem, not the success.
Does your definition have peen sandwiches in it?
Yes.
How many
100%.
Peen sandwiches you had to eat?
Yes. Two today.
Actually,
fantastic.
no. In seriousness, Chris, read the whole.
In
definition.
Syria is fucked up right now. Is what it is.
I said in seriousness.
So a leader is invested in the personal and professional success of their individual subordinates, their own leaders, and not in the results they produce. Leaders take charge for the sake of accomplishing the task or goal that will benefit an external entity, not to get recognized for its completion.
Why the fuck did you stop, pause, and then stare into the camera at us?
For dramatic effect, you puto.
Dramatic pause.
Well,
no,
I didn't.
I do
what
agree.
I normally would have done is, if I was doing the Ricardo, I would have just gotten up and left after I finished the thing. So.
Yeah, it's hard to mic drop when you're like via satellite. Shit.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good practice for you, buddy.
No, it's actually a pretty good. I agree with the definition. I definitely agree with the statement and kind of your argument on that, because it's 100% true. There should be a recognition element to it, especially on your subordinate success, not just professionally but personally. So yeah, I agree with you though. I think it's a great actually definition. But next time when you're reading it, stand tall, don't swirl in your chair.
Do some nonverbal leadership communication. Okay. I'm gonna send you an NLP book.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a little uncomfortable with this. I really wish I can't wait till a future date when we do this where we can't see ourselves.
Yeah,
I can't wait to do it in person.
We have to we'll have to all be in the same room
where we have cameras all over.
I feel like I'm trying to I'm trying to do
take a weed edible or something.
I can't.
Not yet.
Not everybody does that, bro. Be a leader.
Don't be judging. How are you going to judge? How do you judge from a jail cell in Guantanamo? Is what I'm.
Bro, what are you at a fucking art show in your background?
I'm at a record shop over here.
The records he bought in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I bought them in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Are those all of them?
Some of them. These are the ones I bought in Brooklyn, and then this is the Gorillas on wax, and that's a Wu-Tang Clan. Enter the Wu-Tang, but it's done by a concerto orchestra on wax, so it's all strings, like all the instrumentals from all the Wu-Tang album. But
that's pretty cool.
If you ever play that, I'm not coming over.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you come over, he's like, "Hey, man, I feel like all the stuff on your walls needs to just fall off right now. Hold on a second." He knocks everything off the walls with the music he plays.
No, that's your neighbors.
He plays real music.
Yeah, his neighbors have been bumping it lately.
Mike, we'll see. All right, guys. So I want to talk a little bit about community and audience here. This is not working for some reason. Here we go. Why is that one up?
Community versus audience.
Community and audience.
Community versus audience, but it's not showing. I'm gonna have to.
Oh shit!
Give me a second, guys.
Mike Tyson.
I'll give you 2 seconds.
Versus Pina Colada.
I'll give you 2 seconds. All right. I won't give you 1 second. I'll give you 2 seconds.
Here, while we're waiting, I'll cut some entertainment here.
Yeah, do some. Yeah, do that.
Oh my God! With this shit again. Don't, motherfucker.
There we go.
Jesus, please,
why didn't
for the
it
love
do
of
that?
God.
You love it.
Chris, you are having too much. You're having too much fun.
I'm having a blasty blast.
It won't let me. It won't let me. Okay, well, we're gonna talk about community versus audience. It won't let me put this, but this is just a little bit of information that I wanted to share because kind of what we're doing here is building sort of a platform. A lot of people are on social media. A lot of people are businesses are engaging with their customers in different ways, specifically through some of these new media outlets and communication outlets. And so, everyone wants to build their book, their audience, their contact list, whatever you want to call it. And I just wanted to highlight a little bit from a digital marketing perspective, kind of what we consider the difference between community and audience. And so one of the simple ways to look at it is that an audience is a one-to-many relationship, right? And so what's happening is that there is a piece of content, a piece of information, or a solution to a problem that, is going from one to many, right? And so if you're, sort of the broadcasting, think of a radio would be sort of the best type of example for that. And for a community, what you're dealing with is many-to-many relationships. And that basically means it's a very simple question. So when you have an audience, you're communicating to your audience. When you when you have a community, the community is actually communicating within each other and also upwardly towards you. And so that's the difference, right? And so how do you do that? You're like, okay, how do we focus on creating a community, especially from an audience? And one of the biggest ways to empower people, right, is to contribute their own ideas, and to do this either through support or promotion or content, right? And that's why a lot of these platforms that we're seeing are really community building machines. They're encouraging us to do the content building, and in turn we're communicating with each other and then also upwardly with the platform itself, right? So these are some ways that you can start to sort of move your audience into more of a community format. Give them reason.
The difference is the engagement between the participants, essentially.
And their contribution. Yeah, exactly. And then upwardly. And so all communities, just to sort of to give you a little bit of a breakdown. So all communities still have this rule called the 90-91 rule. 90-9-1 rule. And basically what that tells us is that 1% of the community will create the content, 9% will respond to the content, and the other 90 will passively consume, right? So an audience is always an important part of a community, right? But the community also has the ability to sort of generate that content. And so that's how it usually breaks down no matter what. And that's kind of how we can see sort of the things that we're doing here a little bit on the show, and then everything sort of play out. So big cool. I mean, a big difference there. It's kind of cool to know the difference there and how to maybe take some of your audience and try to turn them more into a community.
So then 10% is the culture and 90% is the audience.
You got it.
Basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So then mechanisms for that would be, I mean, like, so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, like you have the movie theater, right? That's the audience, right? They're not interacting in individually. So then how do you engage them? How do you get the audience to leave the movie theater and then interact, right? So
would
so
there
be like
Rotten
your idea
Tomatoes
with the
reviews?
Well, that's one of them, but like your idea with the martini for the James Bond thing.
Well, that's just a way to earn $1. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, but it's just like sort of being immersed, because if you're not immersed in the thing, right, then you're not going to talk about it afterwards, right? You're not going to like kind of.
I mean, like, I think what we're honestly going to see in the future is a little bit of, you know, and I don't know, how do you say this, but sort of like we saw in the museum where like you go and see Star Wars, right? And then everyone who saw the movie, who bought a ticket or whatever on the app or on the phone, gets this like survey of like choose your own adventure. Like, what are some of the things that you might like to see? These are some of 7 things that we think might happen in the future. And then they'll take feedback and they'll mix that feedback in with it also a predetermined storyline, so that people are like, holy shit, like I contributed to this. Like I wanted this to go this way. Right. And so then they sort of feel sort of agency. So I think we're going to see some of that. Possibly.
So some of this fan fiction, basically, you like reach out to the fan to sort of help create the follow-on stories and then bring their ideas to life.
Right. There's this shout out Scorpion Percussion. So for this drummer thing that we saw for that business was really interesting. So there's a drummer that did really good. And they're a really cool band, and they're going to record some tracks. And for one of the tracks, they want to record with an amateur drummer, and they just put something on TikTok, and they're like, "Send us your reels," and then they're just going to pick some random dude to help write the song with them. And so they're going to like pop some just random guy. And so I thought that's kind of cool. That's really good engagement as a band.
That makes sense. I mean, like if you
collaboration,
think
about, with your fans. Can you imagine like if Puffy was like, "Hey man, you know, rap."
Oh, here we go.
And put it on. No, whatever. And put rap and put your rap on TikTok, right? And whoever gets the most fucking likes or whatever, like top 10, I'll listen to them. And then
Well, that's kind of what we were talking about, months ago with the DJing in Africa. I mean, like now that sort of the technology is expanding to the crevices of the world. I mean, why wouldn't you jump ahead of that and sort of attain talent that's unseen earlier?
Yeah. Absolutely, guys. I think you're all on point. I gotta go, guys. I have a HOA vote meeting going on here in about 10 minutes in my complex.
Do you want us to go Indy 500, or do you want us to call it?
I think we're just gonna call it. Let's talk about Indy 500 next show. We got time. Sound good? So, yeah, thanks for joining us, guys, for another episode of Almost Patriots podcast. Every Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can catch us here on YouTube, X, Twitch, and Rumble. We'll catch you guys next week. Oh, and Spotify, too. Awesome. We'll catch you guys next week. Yeah. Later.